Hey y'all, my name is Christina. I'm a travel lifestyle blogger, and in this video, I'll be sharing what my experience was like traveling to Saudi Arabia for the first time as a woman solo traveler. Before we get into the video, be sure to subscribe so you are always notified when I upload and so that you can continue hearing my different travel perspectives as I continue to travel around the world. So I am currently based and living in Doha, so I have a goal of visiting a lot of the surrounding Gulf countries, and my first one is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is a travel destination that I found isn't really discussed as somewhere a lot of people are going, at least in like mainstream travel circles. There's a lot of common misconceptions I find that people still have about the Middle East, even in 2025. For example, a lot of people don't know that women actually are now allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we are talking about a place where public cinemas were once banned, music playing and people being able to dance in public was banned, and there were, like, from what I understand, modest police that would go around to enforce certain dress codes and things like that at one point. However, Saudi Arabia officially announced that it would be opening up its country in 2019 for tourists. Before this, tourism in the country was mostly for religious purposes if people were going to Mecca. However, in recent years, I'm not sure if anyone has seen, like Saudi has really been pushing tourism and has been trying to kind of climb up the ladder in that regard and really get people to visit. I mean, even in the last few years, I've noticed that there's a lot of advertisements for tourism on Instagram, a lot of people traveling to Saudi a bit more, but I'm also kind of plugged into the travel space, so I'm not sure if that's why I've been seeing it, but there's definitely been a noticeable shift. I've actually visited Saudi Arabia 2 times because I'm so close. I went on 2 different weekends. The first time I have a friend that's actually there that I went to visit, but I was still traveling alone by myself. And then the second time was on my own by myself. But even when I was there visiting a friend, I still went to so many places alone, and it was kind of like I was just staying with that person, but not necessarily them showing me around a lot. So in this video, I'll be sharing more about what my experience was like traveling in Riyadh as a woman alone, a Black woman at that, and some things that you should know if you are thinking about heading to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. All right, so let's start with navigating the airport. So flying into the airport, it was fairly easy to navigate, not really much to it. Everything you need, you can ask someone for help and they'll be able to help you. When it comes to the visa system in Saudi Arabia, they do have visa on arrival, or you can apply for an e-visa beforehand, and that depends on your nationality, the country that you are from. As someone who is a US passport holder, I did the visa on arrival option. So once you arrive at the immigration section, there will be an officer there that will tell you, do you have a visa already, or are you doing visa on arrival? I said visa on arrival. He directed me towards the line, and then I was able to do that. There were so many officers and like little station booths available, so the lines go by very quickly. The entire process, you guys, from the time I arrived at that line to the time I got my visa on arrival and they told me I could go, was literally 5 minutes. I paid the fee. So the fee for a visa on arrival is 395 Saudi riyals, which is the equivalent of about 105 US dollars. The e-visa is good for 1 year. It comes with multiple entries and it allows you to stay in the country for up to 90 days. Well, I'll say it's a good deal for me as someone who is close to the country and can travel there often if I want to within the next year. But if you're coming from afar or just wanting to visit for one time, it is an expense. At the airport, you are able to get a SIM card, which I highly recommend if you don't have a phone carrier that gives you international service. That's usually what I do. I find that it's easier and quicker than an eSIM. You will have private taxi drivers coming up to you to ask you if you want a ride or if you need a taxi. These are not regulated from my understanding. I did say yes to one just because I landed a bit in the evening and I was just very tired and trying to get to my place. I do not think that is the smartest thing in the world to do. But as I'll talk about a little bit later, because it is Saudi and the Gulf has such a great reputation for safety, especially when it does come to women, there are a lot of things that I don't find to be particularly sketchy, or things that I would say flat out no to in certain destinations that I find myself a bit more lenient for myself when I'm traveling to places. But honestly, I think the best thing to do is to kind of arrange transportation beforehand so you're not put into that position, because they do tend to be a bit more expensive as well, or maybe take an Uber leaving the airport. Let's talk about where I stayed as a solo traveler in Saudi Arabia. So I found hotels to be very pricey in Riyadh, so I decided to opt in for an Airbnb since I was only staying for a quick weekend trip. It was $133 for a 2-night stay, and I found it to be really cozy actually. It had this really comfortable bed, and you can tell that it's something that the owner kind of put together for the purpose of it being kind of a short-term stay. So I really enjoyed the layout. It was nothing super fancy, but it got the job done. I had a place to lie my head at the end of the night. I will say that I wasn't a big fan of the area that it was in. It just seemed kind of sketchy at night, not for any particular reason, but it just wasn't like in the city. It was a bit away, and I am naturally paranoid and very observant of everything, like every little noise. So if you're like me, I probably wouldn't recommend, and honestly, I wouldn't stay here again for that reason. It was located kind of behind an apartment complex in an alleyway. And again, falling back on the safety reputation, just based off my experience living here in Doha, understanding that Saudi is not the same, but just the reputation that the Gulf has, it was fine. I didn't have any issues. I know that men typically leave women alone in general in the Gulf, from my understanding, although things do happen and things can happen. That's what kind of gave me peace of mind at the end of the day, and I didn't have any issues. But I think I would prefer to stay somewhere next time that's has a bit more lively activity and is a more like solidified structure, not just an Airbnb that's kind of like that was created for the purpose in the back of an alleyway. But also, my travel journey did start as a budget traveler. So if you're someone who's looking to save some money, or these are the options that you have, I did use Airbnb and it worked out for me. So how to dress in countries like Saudi Arabia is usually a big discussion and something a lot of people ask me. So the dress code in Riyadh obviously reflects Saudi Arabia's cultural and religious values. So there is an emphasis on modesty, and it's a bit more conservative. While the dress code has eased from what I understand in recent years, especially as tourism has opened up, it's still very important to dress conservatively, especially in places like religious sites, government buildings, and a lot of public spaces. Women are no longer required to wear an abaya, but you'll find that many people do, just out of respect for the culture and religion. When it comes to clothing for women, I would say to avoid tight clothing. Like loose and flowy like this is usually best. You want to make sure that you are fully covered. Wearing something like this usually works best for me. For me personally, I go for a lot of matching sets. Kaftans like these are my go-to. I love a good kaftan. And just like sets where I'm covered, or I have a jacket on with like some trousers or something like that, but those are my personal go-tos. It's also not required to wear a hijab, which is the head covering. I know that is something people always ask me whenever I post about the region. That is not required. Switching gears to getting around and transportation in Riyadh. So I used the Uber and the metro system in Riyadh, the metro more so to try out, but with Uber I found that it was very safe and efficient as a woman. I was surprised to find out that only Saudi nationals drive Uber as a way for the government to promote more jobs within the society. With that being said, Uber can take a bit of time, so if you are headed somewhere, I recommend ordering an Uber at least 5 minutes before you actually want to leave, because I did have to wait a long time for Ubers in Saudi, which is something I'm definitely not used to here in Doha, so that was very interesting. But still, it was very efficient. I was able to use my card for anything, and that's another thing. It's a very card-heavy society. I didn't need cash for anything, so that was nice. As far as the metro in Riyadh, I did not know either at the time of me riding the metro that this was actually a new initiative that just launched, like the metro system, a few weeks before I visited. So that was very interesting. I found it to be very clean and efficient. I'm not sure if it's well connected throughout the city, or if it's something that I would use to get from place to place and really depend on it, just because I wanted to see and try it out and kind of compare it. to other metro systems that I've used, but it was very clean. I was able to get a card and find my way without any issues. The language in Riyadh. So Arabic is widely spoken in Saudi Arabia. I would say that navigating Riyadh is not impossible or difficult to do without Arabic, but you are bound to find yourself in a situation at some point where someone does not speak English and you will need Arabic, or it would be nice to have Arabic. I have beginner Arabic since I did an 8-month language course before moving to the region. So I'm not fluent, but it was definitely helpful in certain ways, like asking for directions and kind of explaining myself in as best as I can in certain situations. But honestly, you'll be fine without it. It's fairly easy to navigate without Arabic, and I would just highly recommend downloading the Google Translate app in case you need it with your Ubers or something like that. But I never really had any issues with Ubers either. However, I can definitely see how you would find yourself in a situation where you would need Arabic. So I would say to have that and make sure that you can like download the language. So even if you're offline or you don't have signal, you can still use Arabic translation. Okay, let's get to dining solo in Riyadh. I absolutely love the dining scene in Riyadh. It was actually one of the things I enjoyed most about traveling there. I think Riyadh has such a beautiful restaurant scene, and there's so many places I visited that I will miss and just wish that I had access to visit frequently. Places like Naj Village, a traditional Saudi village dining experience with courtyard floor seating, or Suhail, a more upscale luxury experience. There was also this cafe, Earth Cafe, that so many people recommended to me throughout my time or when they found out that I was going to Saudi, that had the best like matcha green tea pancakes that I still dream about to this day. Some places are super packed in Riyadh, so I would just say that when you do find a restaurant that you're hoping to dine at, I would definitely go online and see if it's possible to book a reservation or call if you're able to make calls, because there are some places, especially in popular neighborhoods like Diriyah, that do get packed easily. Yeah, but other than that, I know there are certain destinations where like you go, and if you're traveling by yourself, you can really feel that you're alone and like people will stare and all that stuff. I did not have those issues in Riyadh. I felt very comfortable when it came to going to restaurants and eating alone. I listed all the places that I ate out in my Riyadh travel guide on my blog, so be sure to check that out. Okay, so now we can talk about some of the things I found to do in Riyadh. We can start with my favorite attraction, something that I will be talking about for the rest of this year, the Edge of the World. The Edge of the World is a cliff formation that provides views of the vast desert landscape, so it makes you feel like you're standing at the very edge of the earth, which is why the name is called Edge of the Earth. It was so beautiful, and this is one of the activities that I invited a friend of mine to come with me on, and even she was super grateful as someone who is living in Riyadh now who hadn't had the chance to go. It was just so beautiful and so unreal. I mean, you guys can see from the clips yourself. If you go to Riyadh, this is a must-do. It's about 1 hour from the city, and I just highly recommend going. It is hard to find tours, I noticed, in Riyadh. Like even on some of my popular websites like Get Your Guide and things like that, you'll find that the tours are super, super expensive. So even the one I did is inexpensive, but I think it's good for 2 people. And I've also linked that in my travel guide so you can see that. But if you can't get 2 people, I'm sure he'll be willing to do it with just one. I would just communicate that or maybe offer to pay a bit more since it is out of the way into the city, but it is so worth going. I visited different markets, which were nice. This place called Boulevard World, which is kind of like a mini Epcot, but is essentially a themed entertainment park that kind of brings the world's cultures to life in one place. This was really cool. I greatly enjoyed this, and I actually think it was very well done. So basically it has replicas of like famous international landmarks, and then each different section is a different country. So they had Greece, France, Italy, China, Iran, Turkey, the USA, and it was just very well done, and I enjoyed it. There was the Sky Bridge that I visited, which provides really beautiful views of Riyadh. I visited the National Museum and some malls. So I did a lot. Like my itinerary, I actually had so much that I wanted to see, and that's why I planned a second trip to Riyadh, because I don't feel like I got to see everything I wanted to, especially the Edge of the World on that first trip, and I'm so glad that I came back. And now I want to answer the question of, did I feel safe traveling Riyadh solo as a woman? I would say yes. As a Black woman, I felt very comfortable traveling around Riyadh. I honestly didn't have any issues. The most issues that I did have was just having a camera with me. They do not like cameras in a lot of public spaces, so I had to lock my camera up in a locker a lot of the times. But other than that, people were very nice to me, and I didn't feel like I had any issues or any wrong treatment or anything like that during my time in Riyadh. It was very easy to navigate. I never at any point felt like my safety was threatened. It's easy for me to get from point A to B without needing a guide with me the entire time. I was able to walk into establishments freely, walk around the place without anyone stopping me or any of those issues. So in terms of safety, I do feel like I was incredibly safe in Riyadh. So my final take on Riyadh, I will say that my first trip outside of Doha and to another Gulf country was great. I'm happy that I started with Riyadh. Like I said, I was fairly impressed. I found a lot more to do there than I thought I would. I think the people can make the warmth of the city, and I didn't particularly feel like an overwhelmed, super warm vibe per se, aside from people that were in the service industry and whose job it is to obviously be warm and make you feel welcome. I do think that the tourism is still being developed in Riyadh, just as far as instructions and certain guidance on how to visit things and places to visit. I think even when I wanted to visit Runway Boulevard, which is another airplane installation, finding information and the entrance and the route was a bit tricky, and there weren't a lot of drivers who understood what I was saying or where I was trying to get to, so that was interesting. But I will say that I think Saudi is a country with a lot of gems, a lot of outdoor gems. It's really beautiful, especially the drive up to the edge of the world. I think that is a destination for me that changed my perspective and my thoughts on a lot of things. That was just breathtaking and such a beautiful experience. There's actually one other city in Saudi that I do want to visit, and I cannot wait. I don't think that'll be this year, probably sometime next year, but I'm really excited for it. It's a tourist destination that a lot of people usually visit when they come to Saudi if they are visiting, and so I think that's going to be a really good time and even more beautiful. I did write a travel guide on Riyadh on my blog, beingchristinajane.com. If you do end up visiting, that will really help you plan your trip, as well as a do's and don'ts when visiting Saudi Arabia to help you with some of the different customs and laws that I think are very important to read up on. So be sure to check that out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe for more of my travels, my breakdowns, and opinions to come in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video.